My notes here.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. My name is Roberta, and I'm back with another episode where today we will be joined by Suzanne Mun. She is a life coach for a company called Future Female Entrepreneurs, but she's going to share more about what she does. So before we get started, let me hand over to Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you, Roberta. Yes, so as Roberta said, I'm a life coach and blogger from Northern Virginia, and I help women who feel stuck in life and really lack the clarity and confidence concerning their life purpose, really. And so I love talking to women about finding out what their life purpose is and how they can achieve any goals of theirs. And so, Future Female Entrepreneur is my podcast that I hosted before, but I'm super glad to be here on Roberta's podcast. So, thank you so much for having me.
We are glad to have you here. And I remember the first time that I contacted you, I saw you have this big background poster on your Facebook which says silence your inner critic, and that's what intrigued me. So I want us to
Mm,
talk more about that today, because I
mhm.
think just about everyone I know, me included, we have this voice. This, we called it Sigmund Freud. That's a term I heard from
Mhm.
another friend of mine as well. This
Yes.
inner critic, just when you think, I want to venture into this, I want to try this, it always takes you back and says, oh no, you're not that good, you're gonna fail. So what exactly is this inner critic?
Mhm. Yes. So, from my experiences and what I've learned, I like to see. I think the inner critic is really those voices in our heads whenever, like you said, we're trying something new. Those voices pop up and say to us our internal limiting beliefs, like you're not good enough to go for this certain thing or this goal. You're not blank enough, essentially. You're not smart enough, you're not attractive enough, you're not young enough, you're not old enough, anything that really holds us back from going for what we want. And it's not surprising that that voice is there because it's protecting us from going into any harm or any kind of risk, but it
Okay.
becomes a problem when it paralyzes us into not taking any action at all towards our goals.
So then if you have the survival instinct part, so it sounds like it protects us, which is good. But then how do we distinguish, and how do we make the distinction between, okay, right now it's protecting me versus right now it's stopping me from achieving my goal, let me not listen to it?
Exactly. So that's when it becomes important to discern where exactly that voice is coming from and whether it's based on fact or fear.
Mhm.
So, most of the time, I would say that our inner critics are based on fear
Right.
because usually we're going into an unknown, especially in business. And we can try to figure out how the plan will go, like figure out all the details beforehand. But
Mhm.
overall, in general, if it's something we've never done before, we can't always predict 100% of what's going to happen. So, usually, I see it as our inner critic coming from a place of fear, whether it be fear of failure, which is really common, fear of making mistakes, fear
Mhm.
of being judged by other people. Like,
Very
what is
common.
my family going to think? What are my
Mhm.
friends going to think about me doing this? And also, um, one that not as many people have might have heard of, a fear of success, where
That's an
you're
interesting one for
scared.
me,
Mhm,
the fear of
mhm,
success. If all of us are trying to be successful, so what are we afraid of?
mhm. For some people, fear of success comes from fear of having more responsibilities and fear of not being able to handle all of those responsibilities 100%. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's really, I think, the gist of it. Like, just am I going to be handle everything that is thrown at me? And that kind of relates to the belief that I'm not good enough to be able to handle all of this responsibility as well. But
Okay.
that's what I see fear of success as. Like, we want all of this to happen, but at
Mm.
the same time, it's like, can I really handle it?
Because every course, every coaching program says, I'm going to help you be successful. I'm going to help you be successful. So then what are we? That's the very thing we want. So when we
Mhm,
hear, oh, some people are afraid of success, we think that's the thing that everybody wants. What are you talking about? So it
mhm,
it it goes back to the trigger of I'm not good enough to be
mhm,
able to handle this success. I don't know if you know Puff Daddy's, he had a song called More Money, More Problems, you know.
mm,
A
mm,
billionaire's responsibilities are much more surmountable than responsibilities of somebody who doesn't have $1 billion empire to be responsible for. So
exactly.
how can we then, in the thing that we want, because we want success,
Mhm,
how can we overcome that one particular fear? Because we do want success.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think one way, and this relates to silencing your inner critic as well, but
Mm,
I think one way to really silence those fears in general is to focus on your vision and your why. Because if you're not clear on exactly why you're doing all of this, it can be really easy to be overwhelmed with everything that's might be coming and
mhm.
what you think might happen. And instead, if you're focusing, that's a lot of uncertainty to be
Right.
surrounded by. And if you're only focusing on the uncertain things, the unknown, of course you're gonna get scared. You don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So you should instead focus on, okay, what is in my control and what can I get more clarity on? What is my game plan going to be so that I have a general clear idea of what I'm supposed to be doing every day, every week, every month in order to get closer to my goals, instead
Mhm.
of saying, instead of not even knowing what the goal is. Like, first step, just
Okay.
know what is it that you want? What is the end goal that you want in a month or a year's time? And then once you figure that out, then you can work backwards and say, okay, well, what should I be doing? What are my next steps to work towards that?
So when you talk about the fear of success, like I said, the irony is that that's exactly what we want. So the question becomes, what are we afraid of? If we have those goals and you say, okay, so make a list of things you are able to do and get clarity. And so clarity might mean maybe help, you know, it's,
Mhm,
you know, I've got the skill, I've got these capabilities, but I need help in this section in order for me. And then you talked about the whys. What are people's whys?
mhm,
And are most of your clients clear on their why? Why do they want success? And
mhm,
does success always mean money, or
mm,
the thing beyond the money, the after the money? What do you think the money is going to get me? Do people
exactly.
clarify those, or everybody just thinks, I want to make $100,000 and it ends there? Because usually on the internet space, that's what you usually find is the case.
Mhm, exactly. I think most people I talk to, at least the people around me, they're not exactly in the business space, in the personal development space. And
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is a huge personal growth journey. You're constantly growing and changing so that you can achieve the next step, the next goal. Like you said, every bigger goal, every bigger responsibility comes with more problems,
That's
but
right.
that's what that's what entrepreneurs are. We're problem solvers. And
Mhm.
so, anyways, like, so usually the people that I talk to, I say, like, what's your biggest goal right now? And I would say about 90 to 95% of them will say, I want more money. I want more money. I want to travel more, but in order to travel, I need more money. And then I like to ask, okay, how much money do you want? How much money, like, would it take for you to
Right.
be for you to consider yourself successful and for you to really do what you want to do in life. And
Mhm.
they'll be like, huh, I actually haven't thought that far yet.
Okay.
And so
So they
it's,
haven't thought about the figure of how much they
yeah,
actually want.
like most people will just say like, oh yeah, I want more money, but the reason the cycle continues of limiting
Mhm.
beliefs and like self-doubt is because they like we haven't gotten clear on like what that figure is. Like you need to get really, really specific instead of just saying, oh yeah, I want more money. But if you never specify how much money you want, it's always gonna be more and more money. Yeah, I got $1,000, but I always need more. But it's like if you
Is the
say,
reason what I was saying, they don't know what the money is going to do or
mhm,
fulfill, that
yeah,
they think they have a void somewhere. So they don't know specifically what the money is going to fulfill in their lives. And
mhm,
that could be the reason they don't know the figure.
mhm,
Because
yeah.
if you know, yes, sorry, Karen.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it's really important what you said. Like, it's important to ask what comes after the money because usually people just stop at, yeah, I want more money, but it's
Mhm.
like money is just a tool for us to get something deeper. It's
Right.
really about asking, okay, exactly, like what comes after the money?
Mhm.
Well, if you say, I want more money, okay, how can you get deeper? Well, I want more money so that I can spend more time with my family and have a really flexible schedule so that I don't keep missing my kids' soccer games, or
That's
I have
right.
more time for my health and exercise. And that's
Mhm.
a much more concrete and valuable, I would say, like like it your why, your reason for doing all of this should be tied to your personal values.
Mhm.
And money is just one way for you to get those personal values. So if you value exercising a lot, it's important to focus on that rather
Right.
than just the money part. It's like when you keep asking why, it's
Mhm.
because you want more time for your health and exercise, and that it's going to be a lot easier to go through the hard stuff in life, go through the obstacles in order for you to get that instead
Mhm.
of when it gets hard, you're like, oh, I need to do this for the money though. But it's like money's not the
Doesn't
important thing
sound as
here.
motivating. That's right. In fact,
Yeah.
I wonder how emotions are, how are emotions tied to that, to the
Hmm.
why, to the end goal. Is it, do they feel emotionally driven when they are more specific about the end goal, or are most people just emotionally driven by, I want more money?
Mm-hmm. So I think your goals, you can make any type of goals and they can be driven by anything.
Mhm.
But what actually works is when your goals are driven by pleasure rather than by pain. And
Say that
this,
again.
your goals should be focused more driven by pleasure rather than pain.
Aha.
Yeah. And so this is like the whole nother world of like motivation, discipline, and goal
Right.
setting.
Yeah, but
But
it's an
in,
interesting
yeah,
concept, and I don't think it's one that most people get to hear. So it would, if you'd like, please just elaborate on that.
yes, exactly. So,
Mhm.
this, the first place that I heard this about was from Tony Robbins, and it was that your why should be based on pleasure rather than pain. So, one example would be if you were really emotionally hurt by a family member
Mhm.
and you want to make more money, become more successful so that you can get revenge on that family member, so that you can
I have
get
heard
back
that.
at them. So
I
it's
have
like,
heard that. Don't you, have you seen those stickers on cars that says success is the best revenge against your haters or something? I'm like, do people really get driven by trying to prove to haters, or these people they feel they have conflict with, to say, I'm
right.
gonna be so successful to prove my bully wrong, and to show them how much making my life miserable at school was the worst mistake? And do people really get driven by that?
So I think you can be motivated by rage and negativity and anger in the short
Mhm.
term.
Mhm.
So
Short term.
rage can be really good, like maybe when you're at the gym and you're just like cranking it out on the rowing machine and you're like, I'm so mad, like I want to work out. Like it can be really, really good
That can
because
get you results, yeah.
yeah, it's making you mad at the moment, but
Mhm.
and it's giving you like physically more power just to like crank it out. But the thing is that you can't be in that intense of a state
Mhm.
forever for the long term.
Of course.
Yeah, so eventually, you're gonna simmer down, you're gonna return to a calm state, but of course, you're
Mhm.
still gonna be emotionally hurt. But if you want to stay in this game for the long term, you have to base your reason for going for that success, going for that money, because you want to do it for you, not for anyone else.
Right.
Because if you're doing something like that's pain based and you're really mad at someone else,
Mm.
in the end, that means that you're doing all of this for someone else. Like you're doing it to affect someone else instead of doing it
Motivation is
for
not
you.
within. Yeah.
Right. It should be self-based value, self-based motivation rather
Mhm.
than making like being motivated to keep going because of someone else. It's
To prove a point. Yeah.
yeah, you're
But
living your
let's talk
life for
about
yourself. Right.
sure. Okay. I want to touch um, based on that pain one. So that's the pain of rage, like you said. I'm proving to my haters and my bullies, etc. What about a personal pain that you are trying to eliminate using
Mhm.
the money and the success? Say
Mhm.
you're taking care of your old parent who's got no one to take care of, and you know, caregiving costs a lot of money, and your
Mhm.
job doesn't pay you enough, so
Mhm.
you need to change or do something different to increase your income so that you are able to take care of your old mother or something and the nursing that requires. So that is a pain, but it's not the revenge pain.
Right. Right. Yes.
So
So
how is
mhm.
that different for with those two types of pain, so to speak?
Yes. So in my opinion, that's motivation based on guilt.
Oh,
And when you are striving for something based on guilt, that doesn't really work out so much in the end either. And so for me, the reason that I say this is because,
mhm.
like, personally, I've had experiences with all three kinds of motivational, emotion based goals. And
Can you give
so,
us those three?
yeah, of course. So the first one was the revenge one based on like
Revenge.
deep
Mhm,
pain because of other people. So I
mhm,
had like a really emotional experience in middle school by this kid, one of my classmates, and I was really negatively impacted by it.
mhm.
And from that day on, for like 8 years, I was super mad at him, and I would go to sleep at night like thoughts would like come to my
Mm,
mind. And it was basically he said something really mean to me, and I was like
right.
really young and sensitive at the time. And
Mhm.
so like those thoughts would come back, and they were like motivating me at the time to become quote unquote successful so that I could rub it in his face and like get revenge at him and blah blah blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really exhausting. And
Mm.
the guilt one was reminds me of when I was really ashamed of my body. I had no body positivity. I hated my body. I hated my being in my own skin. And it reminds me of when I think this is like common for a lot of people though. It's like when
Mm.
you start dieting because you feel guilty about yourself. And so it's like, I'm eating the
Feel
salad
guilty.
out of guilt. I'm drinking water out of guilt. Like it's healthy, but
Mhm.
you're like eating and drinking the emotions away. and like the sadness and all the guilt away, and it doesn't feel good. Like that's also exhausting.
So in that particular example, the it's the guilt of feeling like my body is not the way. Well, what's the can you this is interesting. Can you explain that more? Because a lot of people we eat healthy and exercise because we, health is number one.
Oh yeah.
We want to do so. Explain the guilt part. This is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's when like people go on diets, but rather than saying, "Oh, I'm going on a diet because I want to be healthier and I want to
Right.
be able to move around and be happy."
Mm.
So that's pleasure based. Like that's the long-term goal based on pleasure. Like
That's
you're
what we should
imagining the
all strive
happiness.
towards.
Yes.
Mm, mm.
But instead, a lot of people go on a diet because they feel guilty. And it's like, well, I have to get rid of this guilt. Like I feel crappy about myself, about my body. So I have to do this. I should do this. It's not because I want to be happy. It's because I want to get rid of the guilt.
I've never heard it put it like that before. So if the emotion is negative, that is tied to the why,
Mhm.
that's the short, like you said, that's the short-term effect. That's the cranking at the gym because you're mad, but it doesn't
Yes,
have, it will not sustain you long-term to keep going and working towards this goal because the pleasure should be the ultimate long-term goal.
exactly. That's why
Mm.
diets don't work. Like that's why short fat
Right.
diets don't work. It's like, yeah, I'll go on a diet, but it's like the ideal is that you change your lifestyle bit by bit and
Mhm.
small habits rather than trying to turn 180 your entire eating habits, drinking habits in order
Mhm.
to be something that you're not. And it's like,
Is that
it's
when
too
we do
much.
too much too soon on day one? Does guilt make us behave that way? If we're starting this new thing that's going to lead us to success, that's when we do everything all on day one, because tomorrow we must wake up and it should all be fixed.
Mm, I
Is
don't know
that
if,
how guilt makes us behave?
I think it depends on the person. Like
Okay.
guilt, sometimes it could make you like start really strong, but for me,
Mm.
like I still start really strong if like no matter whether my goal is pain or pleasure based. Like
Oh,
some
okay.
people start strong in general, but
Mhm.
I think the main point is that like you shouldn't base all of your actions on negative emotions like guilt and
Mm.
hatred, but instead focus on how amazing you're gonna feel after you do the action.
At the
Like,
end. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Yeah. This has been such an eye-opening session because we hear a lot of this terminology even from our favorite coaches and public speakers and motivational speakers, but I think that just breaking it down the way you just did today has been very eye-opening, much more elaborate, and I think it's going to help us check ourselves why we are motivated to do what we do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like I wish I knew all of this when I was in high school, but of course, like took me a couple of years to figure this out and just
Never too late to
really,
learn.
yeah, like really
Yeah.
just be patient with myself and
Hmm.
not trying to force myself into a status quo that is constantly changing too. So, yeah,
What do
like,
you think are the triggers? Like we were making an example with the bully and the haters and trying to prove, do we do the work? Do we need to do the work that makes us go back and say, why is it something at high school, my childhood, etc., that's making me
mm,
have this goal and work towards it based on this pain? Or should we just think, what, I want to reach the end goal. This is my end goal. I want to reach it.
mm,
Is it more effective to go back, or do we just start, or starting today? Do we just start working
mm,
towards the goal and say, this is my ultimate goal. Let me work on this and just check if, is this based on revenge? Is it based on guilt? Is it based on pleasure?
mm.
Or should we do the necessary work to go within and go back and say, oh, this is why, because my childhood, this is what happened. Is that necessary?
I think you should at least definitely reevaluate what happened in the past if it's still affecting you somehow to this day. And I think inner work is really important for everyone because like it's important to visit the past, but it's also important not to stay stuck there because if you stay stuck there, that's when like if it starts to get to a point where you can't get out, like that's when you
You
might want to
relive
start
it.
looking at
Yeah.
therapy. Yeah. And it can get really hard. But I think in general, like it's important to reevaluate what happened in the past and ask yourself, like, what is it about what happened in the past that's bothering me right now?
Right.
And so for me, it was whenever I get, whenever I think about like things that happened in the past, and I used to like blame the other people in the situations, but then now that I started reevaluating like what exactly happened, I started to look at it like, well, every situation that has happened in my life has introduced me to a new part of myself. And so I'm looking at, yeah, so I'm looking at it like, instead of saying, oh, like, why did that horrible thing happen to me? Why does this always happen to me? Like, you should ask instead, like, try asking, okay, like, what can that teach me? Like what exactly, and if it's something negative that happened, you can ask, what is it about that person or what they did that bothers me? Like why does their action bother me so much? And that will teach
Why are
you,
you so triggered? Yeah.
yeah, and that will teach you so much about yourself. And learning about yourself is so fun. Like you just explore more about what you like, what you dislike, and so you can, that will help you move forward instead of just saying, oh, past is a past, like I don't need it, just move forward. But then if you have things in the past that you haven't
Resolve.
uncovered,
Yeah.
like they will come back to bite you, and they will affect all the things that you do in the present day. Like if you don't figure out why this thing happened and like what about it bothers you, it can it can just show up again in your life because you don't know like what the actual problem was.
Because you're just reliving that. If it's not resolved, yeah, it keeps showing up, as you said. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for helping us to silence our inner critic, for distinguishing between when it helps us on survival mode versus when it actually stops us from succeeding. But today, some of the things that I've been learning for the first time were the failure of success, which will confuse most people when they hear that, but you've clarified that very well because we all want success. And being driven by the negative emotions of guilt and revenge and pain versus being driven by pleasure. Pleasure has a long-term effect, and we can continue to work towards our goals if we're driven by pleasure. That is a lot that we have uncovered today, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are going to benefit from that. Now, before we go, please share with us where people can find you, your social media handles, so that if they want to know more about your coaching program, they'll be able to reach you.
Yes. So you can visit my website, SuzanneSmun.com, or it might be SuzanneMun.com without the S.
Okay,
SuzanneMun.com.
Suzanne Mun, yeah. So just spell the Suzanne Mun because the might not know the the MUN.
Yes. SUZANNEMUN. And you can also just type that in to Instagram. My Instagram handle is with the S, like my email, SUZANNESMUN. I'm on Instagram. I love talking and connecting with people on Instagram. So feel free to reach out anytime. I'm really open to anyone, anything.
Okay. So it's SUZANNEMUN.com. That's the website.
Yes,
And the Instagram is SUZANNESMUN. That's your Instagram handle.
exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Suzanne. We really appreciate having you today here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Roberta. It was so much fun.
Thank you.